I was sorting through some old files in my parents' attic in Boulder when I stumbled onto something that stopped me cold. It was a Saturday afternoon in late September, the kind of day when families are supposed to feel close and safe. I had driven over to help them organize paperwork for their upcoming tax appointment, something I did every year without question. Tucked under a pile of holiday cards and forgotten receipts was a thick manila envelope labeled Clara Megan Trust, Exclusive Beneficiary. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe some forgotten paperwork from a distant relative. But as I rifled through the documents inside, my stomach sank. There it was, in black and white, stamped and notarized by Henderson & Shaw LLP. My parents had quietly set up a substantial trust fund exclusively for my younger sister, Clara. The date on the first document read March 2019. 6 years ago. 6 years of silence. Something clicked in my brain, and suddenly all those years of quietly covering the family's expenses looked completely different. I remembered the countless times I had taken care of the property taxes on their home, a hefty $8,600 every single year without fail. The medical bills for Mom's knee surgeries and Dad's heart medication refills, which had often exceeded $14,000 at a time. The emergency roof repair I covered in 2021 when they called me in a panic, another $9,200 out of my own savings account. All the financial burdens I carried, thinking it was just what the family did, thinking I was helping everyone equally. Yet here was this secret fund, growing steadily behind my back, a fund I had never been told about, a fund designed exclusively for Clara's future. The account statements showed regular contributions, $2,500 every quarter for years. How could they afford that when they claimed they were barely scraping by? How could I have missed this? Why would my parents hide this from me when I gave them everything I could spare? My hands started shaking as I flipped through page after page. Investment portfolios, dividend statements, growth projections estimated the fund would reach nearly $180,000 by the time Clara turned 40. Meanwhile, I was the one who had deferred my own retirement contributions to keep them comfortable. My body felt like it was frozen solid as the reality settled in fully. For 5 long years, I was the one who kept this family afloat financially while they were quietly building a safety net just for Clara. Not for both of us, not for the family as a whole, just her. I sat back down on the dusty attic floor and stared at the papers, the questions swirling in my head. Was it time to speak up or just walk away quietly to protect my own peace? Part of me wanted to pretend I never saw any of it, but a stronger part, the part that had worked 70-hour weeks to afford those payments, knew the truth. Silence wasn't an option anymore. Something had to change, and it had to start with me. My name is Alice Megan, and I'm 36 years old. I work as a financial strategist for small businesses here in Boulder, Colorado. It's a career I built from scratch, starting as a junior analyst right out of college and working my way up through sheer determination and countless late nights. I bought my own house 3 years ago, a modest 2-bedroom craftsman on the east side of town, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished without anyone's help. But my relationship with my family has always been complicated. My parents, Robert and Denise, had me when they were young and still figuring life out. Then, 8 years later, Clara arrived. From the moment she was born, everything shifted. She was the baby, the one who could do no wrong, the one who needed protecting. I became the responsible one, the one who didn't need attention or praise because I could handle things on my own. Growing up, I watched Clara get piano lessons while I worked part-time at a grocery store to pay for my own textbooks. She got a car for her 16th birthday while I drove a beat-up Honda Civic I bought with my own savings. When she dropped out of college after 2 semesters to find herself, my parents supported her decision and continued paying her rent. When I graduated with honors and landed my first real job, the congratulations dinner lasted about 20 minutes before the conversation turned back to Clara's latest creative project. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was strong enough to not need their validation. And when they started calling me with financial emergencies, I stepped up without hesitation. It started small, a few $100s here and there for unexpected bills, but it quickly escalated. In 2020, Dad had a minor heart scare, and the insurance didn't cover everything. I wired them $11,400 to cover the gap. In 2021, their roof started leaking badly during a spring storm, and I paid the contractor $9,200 directly because they didn't have it in their account. Every single year since 2019, I covered their property taxes, $8,600 annually, like clockwork. I set up automatic transfers for Mom's prescription medications, another $320 every month. When Clara needed help with her car insurance after 2 accidents, I quietly paid her premium for 6 months straight, totaling $1,890. I kept a mental tally at first, but eventually I stopped counting. It felt petty to keep score with family. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, being the dutiful daughter, the reliable big sister. But that trust document I found in the attic had a date that burned into my memory. March 14th, 2019. That was the same month I had sent my parents $6,500 to help cover Clara's unpaid student loans from her brief college stint. While I was sacrificing my own financial goals to bail them out, they were setting up a secret fund that would exclude me entirely. The realization hit me like a freight train. I wasn't their daughter. I was their emergency credit line. And Clara wasn't my equal. She was their investment. I needed to know exactly how deep this betrayal went. The next morning, I woke up with a singular mission. I needed to know the full scope of what I had been funding. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started pulling every bank statement, every transfer record, every receipt I could find from the last 5 years. What I discovered made my blood run cold. I had sent my parents a total of $102,400 over the course of 5 years. $102,400. The number sat there on my spreadsheet, glaring at me in bright red. Property taxes, $43,000. Medical bills, $31,200. Emergency repairs, $14,800. Monthly prescription support, $9,600. Clara's various bailouts, $3,800. It went on and on. But that wasn't even the worst part. As I dug deeper into the documents I had photographed from the attic, I found an email thread that had been printed and filed away. It was dated July 2021 from Henderson & Shaw LLP, the law firm that had set up Clara's trust. The subject line read, Megan Family Trust, Amendment and Beneficiary Confirmation. I read through it 3 times to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. The email confirmed that Clara had been present at the signing, that she had full knowledge of the trust's terms, and that she had even requested an amendment to include a provision that would give her early access to partial funds at age 35 instead of 40. My sister knew. She had known for years. Every time I helped her, every time she called me, crying about money troubles, she knew there was a safety net waiting for her that I would never touch. I felt sick. The betrayal wasn't just from my parents anymore. Clara had looked me in the eye countless times, accepted my help, thanked me with tears in her voice, all while knowing she had a cushion I was never meant to see. I pulled up my text messages with her. There was one from March of last year. Alice, I don't know what I'd do without you. You're literally saving my life right now. That was right after I had paid her car insurance for 6 months. Another one from October. "You're the best sister anyone could ask for. I'm so lucky." That was after I covered Mom's surgery copay. Every word felt like a knife now. She wasn't grateful, she was performing. I kept digging. I found another document, a financial projection sheet that estimated the trust would grow to $187,000 by 2030, assuming the current contribution rate continued. My parents were putting away $2,500 every quarter like clockwork. Yet every few months, they called me with some financial crisis that required my immediate intervention. How were they affording those contributions if they were truly struggling? The answer hit me like a slap. They weren't struggling. They were prioritizing. Every dollar I sent them freed up money they could funnel into Clara's future. I wasn't helping my family. I was indirectly funding my own exclusion. I sat back and stared at the ceiling. My hands were shaking. I had spent years believing I was the strong one, the capable one, the one who didn't need help. But the truth was simpler and crueler. I was the convenient one. That evening, my phone rang. It was Mom calling to confirm our weekly Sunday dinner. Her voice was cheerful, light, and completely oblivious. "We're having your favorite pot roast, honey. Clara's coming too. It'll be nice to have both my girls together." I paused, my finger hovering over the decline button. Then I smiled coldly and accepted. "I'll be there, Mom. Wouldn't miss it for the world." Sunday dinner started exactly like it always did. Dad carved the roast, Mom fussed over the side dishes, and Clara scrolled through her phone, half present. They had no idea I had brought a folder with me, tucked neatly in my bag, containing printouts of every transaction, every bank statement, every piece of evidence I had compiled. We made small talk through the appetizers. Clara talked about a new yoga certification she was considering. Mom mentioned a sale at her favorite boutique. Dad complained about the Broncos' latest loss. Normal, comfortable, a routine we had followed for years. Then I set my fork down and reached for my bag. "I need to talk to you all about something," I said, my voice steady and calm. Mom looked up, concerned. "Oh, honey, is everything all right?" I pulled out the folder and placed it on the table. "I found something interesting when I was helping you organize paperwork last weekend." I opened it and slid the first document across the table. It was the trust agreement, with Clara's name highlighted in yellow. The room went silent. Clara's face went pale. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom looked between me and the paper, her mouth opening and closing without sound. 5 years, I said quietly. "You've been building trusts for Clara for 5 years, a trust worth nearly $120,000 right now, projected to reach $187,000 in the next few years. And in those same 5 years, I have personally given this family $102,400. I slid another document across the table. It was my spreadsheet, color-coded and itemized. Property taxes, medical bills, emergency repairs, monthly prescriptions, every single dollar, tracked and verified. Dad finally spoke, his voice defensive. "Alice, you have to understand." "Understand what?" I cut him off, my voice still eerily calm. "Understand that while I was sacrificing my retirement savings to keep you afloat, you were secretly setting up a fund that excluded me entirely? Understand that every time you called me with a crisis, you were actually just freeing up money to invest in Clara's future?" Mom reached out. "Sweetheart, it's not like that. You're so capable, so successful. You don't need help the way Clara does." "Don't." My voice cracked slightly, the first sign of real emotion. "Don't you dare make this about capability. This is about honesty. This is about respect. You lied to me for years." Clara finally spoke, her voice small. "Alice, we knew you'd be upset." "You knew?" I turned to her, and she flinched. So every time you thanked me, every time you cried about how grateful you were, you knew you had a safety net I was never meant to access? She looked down at her plate. I didn't know how to tell you. You weren't supposed to tell me. That was the whole point, wasn't it? Keep Alice in the dark, keep Alice paying, keep Alice playing the role of the family bank while you all plan for a future that doesn't include her. Dad's voice rose. That's not fair. You're our daughter, too. We love you. Love is not a spreadsheet, Dad, but apparently in this family, loyalty is. I stood up, collecting my documents. I want you to know that from this moment forward, I am done. No more property taxes, no more medical bills, no more emergency funds. You want to build a future for Clara? Fine. But you'll do it without using me as the foundation. Mom started crying. Clara looked stricken. Dad's face turned red with anger. You can't just abandon your family. Watch me, I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder. I'm not abandoning you. I'm finally putting myself first. There's a difference, and it's long overdue. I walked out, leaving my untouched plate and a stunned silence behind me. My hands shook as I unlocked my car, but my resolve was solid. The game had changed, and this time, I was playing to win. Monday morning, I called Daniel Harper. Daniel was a financial attorney I had worked with on several client cases over the years, someone I trusted implicitly with complex family finance situations. When I walked into his downtown Boulder office, he took one look at my face and poured 2 cups of coffee without asking. Talk to me, he said, sitting across from me. I laid out everything, the trust, the payments, the years of deception. He listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and nodded slowly. First thing you need to know, he said, is that what they did isn't technically illegal. Parents are allowed to create trusts for individual children without informing siblings. However, he held up a finger, if you can prove that your financial contributions directly enabled the creation and maintenance of that trust, and if those contributions were made under pretenses, you have grounds for a civil claim. My heart rate picked up. What kind of claim? Unjust enrichment, potentially fraud if we can prove intentional deception. But more importantly, you have leverage. Does your family own any property jointly or with your name on any documents? I thought for a moment. The vacation house. My parents bought a small cabin in Estes Park back in 2015. They put my name on the deed because I helped with the down payment. It was told it was for estate planning purposes, so Clara and I would inherit it equally. Daniel's eyes lit up. How much was the down payment? $18,000. I contributed $12,000. He wrote that down. And has the property appreciated? Substantially. It's worth about $340,000 now. Perfect. He started sketching out a strategy. Here's what we're going to do. First, we formally document every payment you have made to your family. We'll create a detailed financial report that would hold up in court. Second, we're going to send a letter to your parents through my firm stating that you are requesting a formal accounting of the vacation property and proposing a restructured ownership agreement. What kind of restructure? Given that you paid 2/3 of the down payment and have contributed over $100,000 to the household finances while they built a trust that excluded you, we're going to argue that you're entitled to a larger ownership stake, possibly up to 50% or more. I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in days. Power. And if they refuse? Then we file a partition action. The court would force the sale of the property and you'd receive your entitled portion of the proceeds, but I doubt it will come to that. He smiled grimly. Most families, when faced with the prospect of losing a beloved vacation home to a court-ordered sale, suddenly become very willing to negotiate. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel and I built an airtight case. We compiled every bank statement, every email, every text message where my parents had requested financial help. We created a timeline showing the correlation between my payments and the trust contributions. We pulled property records, tax documents, and appreciation reports on the Estes Park cabin. The report we assembled was 73 pages long, professionally bound and absolutely damning. It showed in excruciating detail how my family had systematically exploited my generosity while building wealth for Clara alone. On a Thursday afternoon, Daniel sent the letter. It was formal, clinical, and devastating. It outlined my contributions, referenced the trust discovery, and proposed a new restructured ownership agreement.
60% Alice, 40% parents, with the provision that Clara would have no claim to the property unless the trust fund were split equally between us. The letter concluded with a deadline, 30 days to respond with a formal counteroffer, or we would proceed with legal action. That evening, my phone exploded with calls and texts. I ignored every single one. I'd said everything I needed to say at that dinner table. Now it was time for them to respond with more excuses. I was done being the family ATM. Now I was going to be the accountant who balanced the books.
3 days after Daniel sent the letter, my phone rang at 11 p.m. It was Dad. I almost didn't answer, but something told me this was important. His voice was strained, barely controlled. "We need to meet, all of us, tomorrow." "Have your lawyer present," I said calmly. "Mine will be there too." We met at Daniel's office conference room, a neutral space with a long mahogany table and walls lined with law books. My parents arrived with Clara and a nervous-looking attorney from a local firm, someone who clearly specialized in wills and estates, not litigation. Daniel opened the meeting with chilling efficiency. He distributed copies of our 73-page report to everyone present. I think it's important that we all review the facts before we begin negotiating. I watched my family's faces as they flipped through the pages. Mom's hands trembled. Clara couldn't make eye contact. Dad's jaw was set in a hard line, but I could see the defeat in his eyes. Their attorney, a man named Kevin Brightwell, cleared his throat. "My clients acknowledge that Alice has been generous with financial support over the years. However, those were gifts, freely given, with no expectation of repayment." Daniel smiled coldly. "Gifts given under pretenses ceased to be gifts, Mr. Brightwell. Alice was led to believe she was helping a struggling family keep its head above water. In reality, her parents were diverting funds to build wealth for one child while deliberately excluding the other. That's textbook unjust enrichment. We can argue that in court." "You can try," Daniel interrupted. "But let me be clear about what happens if this goes to court. Alice will file a partition action on the Estes Park property. That property will be sold at auction, likely below market value. Your clients will lose a vacation home they love. Additionally, Alice will pursue a civil claim for unjust enrichment, which will be a matter of public record. Every detail of this trust, every payment, every deception will be part of court documents that anyone can access." He paused, letting that sink in. "Or, we can resolve this today, quietly, with an agreement that acknowledges Alice's contributions and restructures the family assets fairly." Mom spoke up, her voice breaking. "Alice, honey, please. We never meant to hurt you. We were just trying to help Clara get on her feet." "For 5 years?" I said quietly. "Clara is 30 years old. At what point does getting on her feet end and enabling begin?" Clara finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. You're right about all of it. I knew what they were doing and I let it happen because it was easier than facing the truth." Everyone turned to look at her. She wiped her eyes. "I've never been as strong as you, Alice. I've never been as smart or successful or capable. And instead of working on that, I let Mom and Dad build me a safety net while you struggled to hold everything together." Her voice cracked. "It wasn't fair. None of it was fair." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Dad spoke, his voice heavy with resignation. "What do you want, Alice?" I looked at Daniel, who slid another document across the cable. "This is a proposed settlement agreement. The Estes Park property will be restructured to 60-40 ownership, Alice and her parents, respectively. The existing trust fund for Clara will be amended to include Alice as a co-beneficiary, with a 50-50 split. Additionally, her parents will execute a promissory note acknowledging a debt of $50,000 to Alice, payable over 10 years with interest, representing partial repayment of her contributions. In exchange," Daniel continued, "Alice will release all further claims and agree not to pursue additional legal action. The family relationship, such as it is, can continue or end as Alice sees fit, but the financial relationship is permanently severed." Their attorney looked at the document, then at my parents. "This is actually quite fair given the circumstances. I'd recommend you accept." Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at Clara. Clara nodded, tears still falling. "We should accept. We should have done right by her from the beginning." Dad picked up a pen. His hand shook slightly as he signed the agreement. Mom signed next, then Clara.
When the last signature was placed, Daniel collected the documents and stood. "I'll file these with the appropriate county offices and ensure all property records are updated. You should receive official copies within 2 weeks." I stood to leave and Clara caught my arm. "Alice, I know I don't deserve to ask this, but can we ever fix this? Can you ever forgive us?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know, Clara. Maybe someday. But right now, I need time and I need space. You all made your choices. Now, you have to live with the consequences." I walked out of that conference room with my head high and my conscience clear. Justice, I learned, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just quietly rebalances the scales.
6 months have passed since that meeting in Daniel's office. The legal paperwork has all been processed and filed. The Estes Park cabin is now officially 60% mine, and I've started spending weekends there, reclaiming it as my sanctuary, rather than a symbol of family obligation. The trust fund has been restructured, and though I haven't touched any of the money yet, knowing it's there, knowing I'm finally recognized as an equal, has lifted a weight I didn't realize I was carrying. My parents have been making the monthly payments on the promissory note without fail. Every payment that arrives feels less like victory and more like acknowledgement. They're not just paying back money, they're paying back respect. Clara reached out last month. She didn't ask to meet or try to force reconciliation. She simply sent a text. "I started therapy. I'm working on understanding why I let things get so bad. No pressure to respond, just wanted you to know I'm trying." I appreciated that more than she probably realizes. I didn't respond immediately, but after a few days, I sent back a single word: good. Small steps. Maybe someday we'll rebuild something resembling a sisterly relationship, but it will have to be built on honesty this time, not convenience. My relationship with my parents is more complicated. We're civil, we exchange holiday cards, but the easy intimacy we once had, or that I thought we had, is gone. Mom calls sometimes, usually when she's been drinking wine, and apologizes through tears. I listen, but I don't absolve her. Some wounds take more than words to heal. Dad and I have barely spoken. I think he's ashamed, and I think he should be. But here's what I've learned through all of this. Setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel. Demanding fairness doesn't make you selfish. And walking away from people who take advantage of your love doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a wise one. My career has flourished in these 6 months. Without the constant financial drain of supporting my family, I've been able to invest in my own business. I hired an assistant, expanded my client base, and even started a podcast about financial literacy and family dynamics. It turns out that my story resonates with many people who felt exploited by those they loved the most. I'm dating someone new, a kind man named Marcus who works in environmental science. When I told him about my family situation, he didn't try to fix it or tell me I was being too harsh. He just held my hand and said, "You deserve people who value you as much as you value them." It was such a simple statement, but it meant everything. Last week, I got an unexpected email from Clara. The subject line read, "No pressure, just sharing." Inside was a photo of her at a job interview, dressed professionally, with a genuine smile. The message said, "Got a position as an administrative coordinator at a nonprofit. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. Thank you for showing me that independence matters." I stared at that email for a long time, feeling something shift inside my chest. It wasn't entirely forgiveness, but it was something close. Maybe hope. Hope that my family might finally learn to stand on their own.
hope that relationships built on honesty might still be possible someday. I saved the email in a folder labeled Progress, because that's what this has all been about, really. Not revenge, not punishment, but progress. Progress toward a life where I'm not just the solution to everyone else's problems. Progress toward relationships based on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. Intelligence and self-respect brought me peace, and now finally, I'm building a future that's truly mine, not funded by my exhaustion, but built on my terms with boundaries that protect rather than isolate. Life is quieter now, simpler. And for the first time in years, when I look at my bank account or my calendar or my future, I don't see obligations.